We want to see people worshiping God, preaching, praying, discipling with local artistic expressions. Ethnodoxology is the academic field, is the study of how Christians in every culture engage with God and with others using their own arts, with their own artistic expressions. Once a Canela leader said to him, "You gave us the word of God in our language, but your friend Tom helped us to express ourselves to God with our own music." So that's powerful.
A very warm welcome to the Lausanne Movement podcast for those who have a passion to accelerate global mission together. My name is Jason Watson, and today on the podcast we have a fascinating interview lined up for you with Hébert Négrau, the very new president of the Global Ethnodoxology Network. Hébert shares his journey of working with indigenous communities around the Amazon, his insights on how local arts shape gospel expression, and why art and worship are not just decorative, but essential in cross-cultural evangelism. So, if you're eager to discover how the gospel speaks through art and storytelling in cultures across the world, I want to invite you, grab your headphones, and let's dive into today's interview with Hébert Négrau. Welcome to the podcast. It's so good to have you with us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. First time. It's a good thing.
It's so good. And if you are watching with us on YouTube, you'll see that Hébert has got drums behind him and different musical instruments. And it's so great because today we're going to be talking about ethnodoxology and ethno arts and how we use the arts to reach people with the gospel. And so I'm not going to steal the thunder because Hébert is here to share all about that. But before we dive too deep and too quick in, can you kick us off just by introducing yourself to the audience and sharing how you discovered a calling or felt a calling to this very unique space of ethnodoxology and ethno arts and ministry?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, ethnodoxology. What a great word. I started in this role of arts and ethnodoxology, ethnomusicology, reading a prayer guide for World's Mission, and in that prayer guide there was a particular moment that we could pray for the ethnomusicologists of Wycliffe, and the text describing the activities of those ethnomusicologists. They were researching local music from different cultures, composing, creating songs for people to sing to God in their cultural context, with their songs, with their musical style. And I was like, wow, that's what I want to do for life. So that's how I started in this. Another good thing that happened also was like good opportunity for be mentored for people, leaders in this field. People like Tom Avery, Robin Harris, Brian Schrag. They were key people that helped me to understand where I was stepping into, and helped me like open doors and participate in conferences and organizations. So things like that were like a good moment for me too, a God moment actually, where God directed me to start on this ministry.
Wonderful. And one thing that you left out is that you spent a number of years working among indigenous communities in Brazil. And so in many regards, you know a lot. You're not actually just an academic or pursuing academic interests. You're also a practitioner. You're an academic practitioner.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why I'm so looking forward to diving deep with you in this, because you both have the experience and the knowledge to share with us. So could you share more about the time that you spent in the field, about the people groups that you worked with, about what your ministry involved on a daily basis, and maybe how you saw God moving within those communities?
Yeah. Let me mention the academic part first. When I was taking my master's degree in ethnomusicology, I discovered this group of people uh, using arts of local arts to reach other cultures and peoples to God. And that also opened doors for me to years later take my PhD, which I'm doing now. I'm taking a PhD in world arts at Dallas International University, and the idea is to serve as arts consultant in Brazil when I finish the program. So before that ministry with ethno arts started back in 2006. That when I discovered, I was doing my master's degree back then, and I discovered uh, how we can use music and arts of the people for help them to worship God with their own style. Years later, in 2013, I joined a Wycliffe organization in Brazil called Além. And that's when my field practitioner experience started as field workers, a missionary. So my wife and I, we worked for 6 years with an indigenous people group in northern Brazil, in the Amazon region. And we worked with oral Bible translation. We worked on the book of Genesis. We've seen a lot of good things happening in that ministry, like people learning about the gospel by reading the book of Genesis, listening to the stories was translated in the book of Genesis. That particular people group there have the New Testament translated and published, and that also help them to engage with the New Testament as well in their language. So yeah, so that's my background. I've been working with ethno arts since 2006, like almost 19 years. 19 years now, and also worked with Bible translation for 6 years uh, in northern Brazil.
Wonderful. One of the questions I had as I was preparing for this was, you have a unique perspective in the sense of that you're not just an academic, you're not just a practitioner, but you've also been in this crazy field of global ministry. You mentioned your work with Wycliffe, and I know that you have been connected with other multiple global missions organizations, including Lausanne. And I was curious, how has your experience with indigenous peoples shaped the way that you think about missions globally? And then on the flip side, how has your global missions experience now formed the way that you've thought about engaging indigenous communities with the gospel?
Yeah, I've been around like globally, as you mentioned. It's been a privilege to work with Lausanne. Years ago, in 2006, I actually I joined the Global Ethnodoxology Network with leaders from different parts of the world. And more recently, I was nominated to be part of the board of members, board of the directors of Wycliffe Global Alliance. So, yes, that experience in learning with, teaching indigenous communities, that helped me to be a better communicator for a global audience. And that's because to communicate with indigenous people in Brazil, they are very objective, they are very concrete. So for us to talk with them and teach and learn from them, the conversations, it's always straightforward. You don't do curves, you don't do, you just you just learn how to be very direct and explain with illustration. So I brought that to my meetings and uh, experiences with global teams. That's been a huge privilege to apply that. But the other way around is that, like, bringing from a global perspective to my day-to-day basis work on an indigenous village in the countrysides of Brazil, in the middle of the Amazon jungle. It, I just learned that it's worth it. It's worth it because I see that Christianity is actually um, supracultural. The gospel is supracultural in the sense that it's above all cultures, but it's also intercultural because we can it can be lived in every culture. So I've seen the expressions of Christianity in many different countries and places because of my global exposition. And that gives me uh, just courage and renewed desire to see the same gospel being lived in an indigenous community applied to that reality. So I love that. There is a missiologist called Lamin Sanneh. He says the gospel, it's not uncongenial in any garb. People from every culture can live fully the gospel.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a beautiful picture, and word, just the word itself, being super cultural is such a helpful framing. I think, especially as we begin to speak about ethnodoxology and ethno arts and the use of dance and music in sharing the gospel with others. And so, could you help us as we begin to talk about this? Many people might not be familiar with those terms. Could you explain these to us in a way that we can maybe understand, and why you think that this is something that's important in terms of concerning God's global mission and sharing the gospel with others?
Yeah, sure. So this fancy word, ethnodoxology, is made of three Greek words. So ethne is people, doxos is glory, and logia, study. So basically, ethnodoxology is the field, academic field, is the study of how Christians in every culture engage with God and with others using their own arts, with their own artistic expressions. So basically, we want to see people worshiping God, preaching, praying, discipling with local artistic expressions, using their arts to do that. And we also use the word ethno arts to express, to refer to the traditional arts of a people, a local people from a different community than our community. We truly believe that Christian faith is a communicative faith. The gospel is a message, right? It's the good news. Literally, it's a news, it's a message. The Bible is a book. God chose to reveal himself in a book form, right? So if we want to a local community of Christians, so if we want them to understand the gospel, we preach in their language, right? If we want them to understand the Bible, we translate the Bible into their language. But if we want them to express themselves to God, we use their traditional arts for that. So that's the communication. It has two ways, right? There is the receiver and the people that is sending the message, and we need to use the same we need to use the same code. So it can be the language for Bible and preaching, but the response of the people to God, arts are a powerful means of communication for that. There was an ethnomusicologist from Wycliffe called Tom Avery. He worked in Brazil for many, many years, studying, researching local music of indigenous people in Brazil. And he usually worked alongside Bible translators there. And there is a story that he used to tell of a very successful project. He composed new songs for the Canela people. And the Canela people liked so much that song. They were like using that everywhere. They were really, really engaging with God. So once a Canela leader came to the translator and said to him, "You know, Jack, you gave us the word of God in our language, but your friend Tom helped us to express ourselves to God with our own music." So that's powerful, right? The arts of a people is deeply and emotionally rooted in their identity. So we want the gospel, this beautiful message, to be understood locally, to be applied locally. So one of the problems or issues is if we bring this beautiful message with a foreign rap, with a foreign art or format, it can have the risk of being misunderstood or being a message from the outside. It's not really for me. So putting the news, the good news of the Bible into a local art form can make that more deeply rooted in the culture, but also being seen as a message for them.
Wonderful. I really appreciate you taking the time just to unpack that for us. I think for any of us who have tried to share the gospel with others or engaged with different people groups as we preach the gospel, I think part of the tension that I've experienced is how do we distinguish between what an ethnic group's culture is, and I suppose ethnodoxology kind of fits into that space, and what is a deeply rooted religious traditional experience. So for instance, if a group were to worship their gods, their previous gods or ancestors in a particular way, would they be encouraged to worship Jesus in that same way? So if they're using certain instruments and certain beats and certain rhythms, it's part of their culture. How do we distinguish what is part of their culture and what's part of their religious paradigm? And how do we introduce Jesus into that space without confusing them?
Yeah, there is a great tool for that. It's called critical contextualization. It was originally designed by mixologist and anthropologist Paul Hiebert. And in critical contextualization, he basically said, instead of you reject everything that is from the culture and embrace everything that is outside the culture and make the gospel a foreign news to the people, you actually assess what you have in the local culture and decide what is possible to use or not. So it's not completely rejection of the local things, the local art forms. Not also is a completely acceptance of the local arts form. Everything that I have is for God. We understand that because of the sin stained people's lives, but also entire cultures, right? So there are aspects of a culture and the arts of a particular culture that are stained by sin. And we need to redeem that to use for God's purposes. And the way we do that is by doing critical contextualization. So basically, you gather a group of Christians or leaders or gatekeepers in the community. They study the Bible together to see, okay, how can we apply this biblical truth to our lives using our own traditions? And then they will study the tradition enlightened by the Word of God. So they assess both things. They say, yes, this is not good. We cannot replicate this, but we can adapt. Maybe they would choose to adapt a particular traditional practice. Maybe they will have to reject completely or create something new. But when they are engaged in that kind of thinking, they will be able to create new things based on their culture. You see? So it's also not accepting everything from the outside. It's actually adapting your culture, even though you have to change something or reject something. But the new creation, new tradition, new art, new music will be based on your cultural system.
How much work does a missionary have to put in to doing cultural contextualization or critical cultural contextualization within themselves? Like, this idea of when I'm entering into another culture, I bring my culture with them and my religious paradigm of Christianity with me. And so from the outset, how much work does the missionary have to do to ensure that they're assessing their own religious paradigms?
Hopefully, none. But it will depend on the community that the missionary is working. If the community has a well-established church and local leadership, the missionary will aid, will support the discussion process, letting them to take all the leading and the decision-making process. It won't be from the missionary. The leaders, the local leaders and local people will make the decision. With the context where this missionary is working is more like initial with the gospel, and then in that particular context, he will have to take the lead in terms of discussions and bring decisions. But either way, it's important for the missionary to have a good understanding of the culture, because it will help him to help others in that decision-making process.
What are some, and I'm asking this off the bat, so you could feel free not to answer this question, but what are some ways that we can, or tools that we can use to analyze culture? Do you have any suggestions on how we can become better at identifying the cultural paradigms that we are absorbed in?
So the critical contextualization is one. There are multiple other ways. There are numerous others tools that you can use, but there's a particular one that we use in the ethnodoxology group around the world, and it's called Creating Local Arts Together. That is a manual that help cross-cultural workers to understand the arts of a local particular community and encourage them to use their arts to God's purposes, to make that a better community in the future. So we have that this book, the Creating Local Arts Together manual or book, was launched, the first edition in 2013, but we just got a second edition released by William Carey Publishing early this year. So we have a renewed second edition with new strategies, but it is basically a manual that you can follow the steps, so you can apply that in a particular group, and that's specifically for the arts. So it's a good place to learn about that is taking the workshop called Arts for a Better Future, and it's held here in Dallas, but also in all nations and some other countries as well.
Wonderful. I'll be sure to put that in the show notes for anyone that wants to pursue those resources. What are some of the biggest challenges you face in helping churches and mission organizations embrace ethno arts? Are there any misconceptions that perhaps need to be broken down before they're willing to engage?
Yeah, that's a very good one. I think one of the biggest challenges, Jason, for church leaders and cross-cultural workers to face is that the concept we have for arts is different than understanding local people have for their arts. For us, arts are a cherry on the cake. It is something secondary. It is something just that we do for our pleasure or for a leisure time. We listen to a song because it's beautiful, because we like it. We watch a movie to relax. We go to a theater to watch a drama thing because it's beautiful. So arts in our culture for Westerners is more in the realm of the leisure, the pleasure. For traditional cultures and oral cultures, arts are actually the meat and potato of the culture. It's the main means of communication. So imagine that you bring your concept of arts for beautiful things and just for my free time, and you bring that concept of arts to a culture where arts are actually the main way to communicate important messages. How do you think they will react, right, when you neglect their artistic expressions? So because this understanding is so widespread in Westerners, we actually don't grasp the real need for use local arts when it comes to a local community in majority world on the oral cultures. So that's one thing. And because arts as a means of communication, we want to make good use of local means of communication, artistic means of communication to communicate the beautiful message of the Word of God. But also a second thing is that arts, that understanding that arts is a universal language. So we have this saying you probably have heard of before, that music is a universal language. Oh, because music is a universal language, that means that I can use my music everywhere and it will communicate like it communicates to me. But actually, music's not a universal language. Arts are not a universal language because they communicate differently in different parts of the world. They are indeed a universal phenomenon because they exist in every culture, but there's not no such a thing as unique, the same language, artistic language that works everywhere. So this misunderstanding, this misconception that music is a universal language leads people to think, okay, if it's a universal language and it's good for me, of course it will be good for them, right? But that misunderstanding uh, leads people to use a music system for, we have 7 notes or 12 notes, right? If you count the sharps in our music system, and we bring our this complicated music system to a people that only have the pentatonic scale with 5 notes. It's crazy, right? It will sound weird. It will sound foreigner for that particular group. So yeah, so music is and arts are not a universal language. And yeah, if we take the gospel in this foreign vessel, we'll be in the risk of making this precious message understood by the people as a foreign message, something that is not for me, not applicable to my life. Yeah, so I would say those two are the main challenges.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we experience that kind of challenge even in our local churches, right? The moment we have
Yep.
an intergenerational community, we suddenly have this tension, you know. So in my church, we have good 60, 70-year-olds who like to worship in the way that they were raised in. And then if I'm engaging, you know, I like a certain kind of genre of worship, and for me that is worship, and that's how I've been trained to, and I've been exposed to worship to God. And the younger generations don't necessarily engage in that kind of way. And so I would imagine that once you even move outside of a local church, established local church context, and you move into to an indigenous group in Brazil, you're right. It's not necessarily, you know, transferable. But perhaps what I'm hearing from you is that arts is a tool to share the gospel, but it's not, you know, we got many tools in our toolbox. Not every tool is a hammer, right?
Yes.
And so can we unpack some gospel opportunities? You have seen firsthand how the arts can open up doors for the gospel in ways that traditional approaches sometimes don't. So what are some surprising ways that you've seen God move through ethno arts?
It's beautiful when you see like people using their arts to express themselves to God. In a recent project, worked with a group of people called Paipa, a people group in Brazil called Paipa. They are from central Brazil, and they had recently finished the translation of the Gospel of Luke. And because of political situations in Brazil, the translators could not come into the village to give them the translated book. So they talk to me and ask, can you do something like artistic so we can have parts of this book available for the people there in the village? And we worked together and we created a video with a contextualized paints and arts for the parable of the two builders, the foolish and the wise builder. And the narration of the video was the Paipa translator just reading the book they just finished the translation. So we had this video ready and send them to the community. So there was one good example of how we can use local arts. But there is a very interesting video that happened in a church in Africa, and the first part of the video is a missionary leading a hymn and singing with the congregation. But if you pay attention in the video, the congregation is mostly composed by women and children, and they are singing a Western hymn. But the second part of the video is after they understanding the powerful way they can use their own music to worship God. They have this whole congregation engaged in singing together and dancing together. It's just beautiful.
Well, thank you for sharing that video, Abel. I truly appreciate it. I think it really just kind of solidifies it. And if you're listening to this via audio, you can go and find the video on Lausanne Movement's YouTube channel. So, Abel, there's a lot of people listening to this. Some are church leaders, some are missionaries, some work within nonprofits. What advice would you give these leaders who might be a little bit hesitant or just need a little bit more encouragement to embrace the indigenous or culturally distinct worship styles that they're engaging with? And how can they start integrating this into their ministries?
So I think the main advice is pay attention to how people use their own arts. The importance of people give to their own arts. And use that as your guiding way to decide how you're going to use arts with them. So don't bring your assumptions that arts is a secondary thing to a community, because it is very likely that they will give way much more importance for their art than you give to yours. So that's one thing. And the second thing is they will know more about what it can be used and what cannot be used in their community in terms of arts, then you probably will. As an outsider, we can know as much as possible, but not everything. Our knowledge of the culture will be limited by the time we spend with them or the many sources or books we've read about them. So we will never be as the same as an insider. So pay attention and listen carefully to the plans of local people, the community or leaders of that community can give to the thinking process of how they can use their own arts, and be there for them, even if the decision comes different than what you think would be better, right? Because local Christians also have the guidance of the Holy Spirit, just as missionaries do. So it is one thing that we need to learn and apply.
Yeah, and I would be curious to hear from you about, there are church leaders who are listening who perhaps their churches are culturally diverse. Maybe Their community started off as a white English only community, and the community has begun to change. What advice would you give to churches who were traditionally English churches, maybe have the traditional framing, and different cultures are entering into this space? As I'm leaving it open because this can be applied in many different countries and many different circumstances. But how does that do the local church leaders need to begin to think about incorporating the other cultural group into the rhythms of the worship and the arts within their community? Do you have any suggestions?
Yes. Multicultural worship is one of the main ideas that we carry and encourage in the ethnodoxology world. And we have a group of people working like in multicultural worship. And what they usually recommend is that you can have different approaches on how you can engage the arts of different traditions in your church and the service. You can first, one of the ways is you can integrate songs and the language of that particular group with translation to English instead of having traditionally in English and translation to the other language. So that's one thing. Another thing is actually involve non-English speakers in the leadership of songs and in your church and other art form at a church. You can also engage the entire church in prayer prompts in different languages, and language that are part of your church, but not the majority part of your church. So that's another thing. And also showcase of artwork of different artistic traditions in our church can also be encouraged by someone that is visiting your church. It's part of it is a multicultural church, and imagine the beautiful paintings they can see from different traditions of your church, cultural traditions. So that's another option. So we have multiple ways to engage multicultural church and with different arts in a service.
Wonderful. Thank you, Abel. So you've mentioned so many good resources already, and I've encouraged the listeners to take a look at the show notes for those. Are there any other resources that you would like to direct us towards as we perhaps want to explore deeper and take this further within our own context?
Yes. So the Global Ethnodoxology Network is a group of people that they have more than 300 ethnodoxologists around the world. We have representatives from 80 countries in this network or working in 80 countries. But we are a network of people that use arts, local arts, to engage communities and people with God. And we, as part of that network, we have a newsletter that is available for free. You can just register to receive a newsletter, and every month we have a highlight of what's happening in the ethnodoxology around the world. And the worldofworship.org is a website of the Global Ethnodoxology Network. That's where we put the main ideas. We have core values, we have stories and illustrations for people that want to know more about ethnodoxology. A book called The Handbook of Ethnodoxology is called Worship and Missions for the Global Church. In that book, we have many stories and illustrations, also tools that you can use to apply different arts, use different arts traditions in different parts of the world. So I can put the link for the book as well. I already mentioned the Creating Local Arts Together manual. It's also very good. In a more recent publication from ENQ, Evangelical Mission Quarterly magazine from January, is they have this entire issue dedicated to arts and missions. We have a few articles that are already available online. So the last one is here in the Lausanne website. You have 3 articles that will cover about arts and more specifically about ethnodoxology.
Wonderful, Abel. I'll make sure that's in the show notes. Any closing thoughts as we begin to wrap up this interview?
The theme of the Fourth Congress of Lausanne in Seoul was that the church should declare and demonstrate or display Christ together. And again, we have the whole package about the Gospels of communication. The church is the sender, the part that sends the message, right? And the message is Christ, is the gospel. We should do this together. But the way you do this is declaring, like verbally, but also displaying visually, artistically. So in his final speech, Michael O said, we need to show the world the beauty of the bride of Christ, the diversity of the church, which is the bride of Christ. And we are diverse, and we have different ways to apply the gospel to our lives. The way you do in South Africa is the way I do in Brazil, because our challenges are different, right? So we can also use different artistic traditions to help display Christ and demonstrate this big, huge variety of the church that God made.
Wonderful, Abel. Thank you so much for taking the time just to share your insights with us. You know, as we think about taking the gospel to every person and every people, I think this is such a pivotal conversation for us to have, that it's not just about declaring, but also displaying, as you have said. So thank you so much for your time, and I'm trusting that this has added value to those who are listening, as it's added value to me as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was great to share about that.